Hello and welcome to A Woman's Heart. I'm Lisa Granger. We are wrapping up the Keeping Christ in Christmas series with the amazing Angela Donadio, talking about embracing limitations, worshiping, and focusing on meaningful experiences. Welcome to A Woman's Heart. I am looking forward to this conversation, which I frequently say, but I have thoroughly enjoyed the previous conversation we've had. And we have Angela Donadio here with us today. And thanks so much for joining us today, Angela.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so glad to be here. I've known you for a while, but this is a different setting, and I've already loved chatting with you today.
Yes, it has been fun. And we have discovered we have some mutual loves in shoes and jewelry. And
The important things in life,
yes,
right?
the important things in a woman's life, all of that. And I have enjoyed getting to know you in other settings. And as you mentioned, this is a new setting for us to have you on the show and be talking via Zoom and such. But I am glad that God put you on my heart for this Christmas series because I know it is going to be a very rich conversation. And before we dive into that, though, we've mentioned how we have enjoyed getting to know one another. I would love for my listeners to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And I always like to ask for something fun that isn't normally in your bio. And don't tell me you don't have something fun because I know you have lots and lots of fun stuff.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, we live right here in the same state. So my husband and I pastor a church. My husband's the lead pastor of River of Life in Fredericksburg. Would you believe we just celebrated our 30th year at this church? So we were
Wow.
student ministry pastors first, and I was the worship pastor, and then we've stayed on. I was worship pastor for another 10 or 15 years under his leadership. So 30 years in this area. We've raised our kids here. We have two grown adults, 24 and 20, 25, just turned 25 and 28. I know, right? When they get in the 20s, you
When
kind
they
of
get close to their
get a
birthdays, you
little
have to think
worried.
about
I
how
know,
old are
right?
they again? Oh, no.
Exactly. Yeah. So we love doing that. So that's been our main part of our lives in
Hmm.
ministry, is church ministry. But about 15 years ago, I started branching out more into parachurch ministry of writing, speaking. So I've
Okay.
authored 4 books and founded the Communicators Collective, which is a retreat for Christian communicators. Lisa's joined us there. I
Yes.
do international ministry, first foremost in Africa. So I work with empowerment initiatives and education initiatives there, but that's branched out into other countries. So usually 3 or 4 international trips a year. Love connecting with the global church, see what God is doing worldwide. So yeah, it's just been an amazing adventure. I'm an adventure junkie. That's probably the
Yes.
fun fact about me. So I love all things roller coasters, anything that's got just a little bit of thrill and maybe a little bit of danger to it. And I climbed Kilimanjaro for clean water a decade ago,
Very
uh,
good.
not in the bougie boots that Lisa and I love to wear. In my
Yes, I'm sure
real
you had very
hiking.
sensible shoes for that. Although when we climbed Kilimanjaro, there was a lady there. She had sensible shoes, but she had glued a bunch of crystals on them. So they were sensible, but they were still blinged out. You would have loved them.
I would have loved, why didn't I think about that? I remember that we both climbed that, and I rarely talk to someone else that's had the same experience. So anytime I can combine the message of sharing the gospel and some form of practical means of loving on people where they are, I'm all in for that. So I'm also a survivor of 2 near-death health experiences. That's a different side of my
Wow.
story, but I've lived through nearly dying in 2001 and then again in 2003. So even though I was a believer before that, Lisa, I grew up in the ministry. My parents were in the ministry.
Hmm.
That really shifted the trajectory of my relationship with the Lord. It became a lot deeper and richer. And
Yeah.
I lost a lot of memories prior to that. So I literally feel like I have a life before 2001, and then I have this other life now. I
Wow.
wouldn't I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone, but I wouldn't change it
Hmm.
because I wouldn't be who I am. And all of the things I just mentioned really happened after those near-death health crisis and all of the writing, speaking, traveling. There was just a whole world that the Lord wanted me to trust him in. And probably, I don't know that I would have without having walked through a very shifting season for me.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it, but it did redefine my life and my relationship with the Lord. And I live really based on God's assignments for my life. And I don't know that I lived that way before. I think I lived more performance based,
Hmm.
trying to kind of please God and earn God's
Yeah.
favor, and just some backwards thinking in theology. Those experiences really catapulted me to just a deeper love relationship with the Lord, Lisa, so that what I do comes out of that rather than me doing to earn it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So that's a side of me that a lot of people maybe not know unless they've heard my testimony, but it has had a deep impact on the way that I live my life
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Well, and in that vein, we're talking about keeping Christ in Christmas and going deeper. How did it, I'm assuming since it changed everything, it changed how you looked at the holidays and celebrating Jesus' birth at the holidays. So, yeah, I would love for you to, how did it change how you celebrated or went through the holidays after those?
Yeah, if I think back to the first holiday afterwards, Lisa, I mean, I nearly died in October. So that first Christmas was so raw.
Oh, yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
really fresh.
Yeah. So I mean, we're talking 20 years now. It feels like it was yesterday in some days, and other times it feels like it was a world away.
Mhm.
I definitely think you emerge with a different set of perspectives.
Yeah.
You have to still be reminded not to sweat the small stuff and to it pulls back the lens a bit on life so that you if you allow the Lord to do with it what he wants, because we
Mhm.
all walk through things. For me, it's been health crisis, but whatever it is we
Yeah.
walk, I think the holidays can bring out the best and the worst in us,
Yes, they can.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
because it brings out expectations that you have.
Mhm.
Maybe they're not met or you're disappointed in, or other people's expectations, or kind of running in a harried place. But for me, I think I emerged with a much more grateful perspective. I really believe the Lord gave me these bonus years. I shouldn't be here, but I am. And so,
Mm.
interestingly enough, I'm not one on having to do the same traditions every year, but
Okay.
I'm big on making each experience meaningful and looking forward with what God wants for it. So I think just a posture of deeper gratitude
Mhm.
and those things, people and enjoying people and their presence, maybe it's just a lot more important to me than some of the other things. Those are
Yeah.
the things are too, and I can get caught up in all the trappings. But wow, when you nearly died and you're here, you're really grateful, Lisa. Honestly, I just feel really
Yeah.
grateful for the Lord.
And I imagine too, when you have a health crisis, you don't feel up for a lot of the extra trappings.
Yeah.
And so it simply is just not going to happen out of a practical, logistical reason if you don't have the energy or the ability to do all of the trappings. And so yeah, you really have to kind of simplify and focus on what's truly important about being with family and being together. And you just can't get caught up in it all,
Right.
no matter how much you may enjoy. I know some people that we both know. We have a mutual friend who actually adores decorating, and that is their therapy. They love decorating. And then other people hate it. That is stressful to them. So it's whatever is truly meaningful to you or
Right.
to the listener. It's those things are the things that become far more important than all of the
I
exterior
agree.
trappings.
I agree. And I think embracing limitations is a part of that. You're not going
Hmm.
to, you can't do it all, and it's okay.
Yeah.
There are things that I am limited even now in my health and life, but rather than focus on my limitations as being a negative, in fact, I was just chatting about this week. This is not Christmas related, but what's coming to me is I was just reading about Zacchaeus in the Bible, who Jesus comes into Jericho, and Zacchaeus was a wealthy man, an influential man. He had a lot
Hmm.
from a earthly
Yeah.
standpoint, but he had this just natural limitation that he was short. And so because of that, he wanted to see Jesus and he climbed a tree. And I remember learning a little kid's song, Zacchaeus was a wee little man and climbed a tree. But when I read that story this week, it was in my just chronological reading, it's where I was struck, Lisa, that his limitation became the catalyst of what allowed him to see Jesus.
Yes.
I don't know that he would have pushed through to like, whatever it takes, I've got to see Jesus. And Jesus saw him, came to his house, a whole life transformation. I think sometimes we can resent our limitations. I've had to
Hmm.
go through that process. There's still times I do,
Yeah.
but if you can move from resentment of limitation to embracing them and asking God, what are you doing even in and through them? And how can I see you and see others differently, even because of a limitation? That shift of perspective, it seems subtle, but it can make a big difference in how we walk through a situation, a trial, or just a change that we weren't expecting and maybe didn't actually want in our life. So limitations can be a good thing, especially at the holidays.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little grace. You don't have to do all the things all the time.
Hmm.
Limitations can be our friend.
And as you're saying that with the limitation and that changing in perspective, one of my thoughts was I may not have actually, I went through a series where my back was hurt and I did have a physical limitation for a while. And fortunately, I've healed and I don't have that physical limitation, but I have personality things that I can see as a limitation or a weakness. And when
Mm,
you mentioned the limitation, I was like, well, that doesn't have to be a physical thing or a health thing. That could be a
right.
mental thing. That could be some of my personality traits that I'm like, oh, gosh, why did you make me like this? I wish I was, I didn't have this mind or this personality or this thing. This
Mm,
is a weakness.
mm,
But I'm learning that, well, yeah, maybe it is, but some of those are what keep me tied to Jesus because
mm.
then if I didn't have that, I might think I'm doing all of it on my own.
That's so true.
And so I think that limitations are just even just something about ourselves that we
Mm,
don't like, that we wish was different, that we see as a weakness or a drawback. We can even use those to
mm.
draw us closer to Jesus, and that those can be what he uses. I know I've heard Joyce Meyer say many times she hated the sound of her voice. Well, she's
Wow.
this huge preacher. I mean, her
Yeah.
voice is heard around the world. And so the one thing she really did not like about herself is the thing that God has used the
Mm,
most.
mm. It frees us up from comparison, which can also creep in the holidays.
Hmm.
Comparison, I'm not as good as this, or I don't make a mountain of food. I'm not the best cook, maybe, but I might provide, I always plan our kids' travel plans and put the schedule, put the trips together and planned experiences and memories. But if I focused on, but so and so is so good at this recipe and that meal, I think we get caught in that comparison trap, which can really
Hmm.
escalate at the holidays rather than leaning into not only limitations in any realm, but also just what are the ways God has wired us, and how do we
Yes.
bring that into the holidays in a way that doesn't allow comparison to kind of choke out the beauty of Christmas and the true celebration of Christmas. Comparison is really a thief, Lisa, and
Yeah.
we've seen it in so many areas of lives. But at the holidays, I think it really can come in more, whether it's financially what we can provide in the way of gifts or so many things. We've got to let that go too and
Yeah.
not let comparison steal the real beauty of Christmas and what we're here to celebrate.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I remember I was scrolling just a little bit through Facebook and I saw somebody's Christmas tree and it's a beautiful tree and their husband loves to do that. And I caught myself doing well, I'm gonna, ours isn't up yet and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all the other things. And I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna enjoy the beauty of their tree. And when my tree is up, however it's decorated will look pretty for my house. So,
Amen. I totally agree. Totally agree. But I think we need the reminders, and it can be just a quick scroll on Facebook and all of a sudden we feel that pang of comparison or insecurity or inadequacy. And we have to realize to be intentional, I think, about keeping our focus at Christmas is intentionally knowing what may rob it. And I think
mhm.
comparison, feeling frustrated by limitations, what we can't do, those things steal the joy out of Christmas pretty quickly if we're not intentional about it.
Yeah, and I've heard so many stories about people whose most precious Christmas memories are actually nothing to do with stuff. And sometimes it's the Christmases where they didn't have much. that the memory of those or what they did, they were so much more thoughtful about what was given. And
Mm.
those can be some of the most precious Christmas memories that we have. I was telling somebody else that one of my favorite Christmases was the year I got to be able to give something to everyone in my family. It was the first time I'd ever been able to do that, and how much joy that was. And that wasn't extravagant gifts for everyone, but I had something for everyone, and how much I enjoyed that.
Yeah, agreed. I completely agree. It's a perspective shift, a lot of it more than
Mhm.
anything. And just knowing we have to bring a different posture sometimes into the situation, check our hearts as we go along in the season.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to something that you mentioned touched your heart, because in looking at keeping Christ in Christmas, I had found a quote about whether or not is it keeping Christ in Christmas or whether it's keeping Christ in us. And so when you mentioned that shift and that heart posture, that really struck you. And I would love for you to expound on that.
It did because when I first was looking through what we were going to share about today and talk about, my mind, Lisa, and I'm not saying you meant this, but
Mhm.
my mind went to the external things. How do
Yeah.
we keep Christ in Christmas? So that feels like, what do I need to do to externally almost not manipulate, but pay attention to all these external factors? And they matter. Don't get me wrong, those
Yeah.
things matter. But when you think about, or is the focus keeping Christ in me? When that's my focus, then it's an internal posture, not external. It's not
Mhm.
about controlling all of these external environments. And let's be honest, we can't control all of the external variables at Christmas. Who
No,
comes,
we cannot. Try as we
right?
may, it does not
Right?
happen.
And I think if our focus is on that, how do I keep Christ in all of this? For me anyway, I can get very absorbed with the external things, trying to control them, trying to keep a handle on all of that, and immediately it goes awry. But if
Mhm.
the focus is on how do I keep Christ in me, that's an internal heart posture that I'm responsible for, that I do have agency over. And so now I'm not just thrown to the whim of what other people do or don't do.
Mhm.
I can keep Christ in me. What did he come to do? What is he currently doing? And what is he going to come again to do? Because Advent really, I mean, here we are by the time this interview airs, the very, very end. We're just about to celebrate Christmas. And we look back at what he did. He came
Mhm.
2,000 years ago. We celebrate that. But Christ in us is this hope, Lisa, this promise of what's coming.
Yeah.
And so even when things get difficult, uncertain, chaotic, whatever's gone wrong, as you've been planning for Christmas, we're all going through it. We get it. But when I think about keeping Christ in me, it's not only his character now, but it's the promise of his advent again, his coming again,
Mhm.
which as a Christ follower, that's our focus, right? That's
Yeah.
our hope. Yes, we look back and we thank God that he sent Jesus to dwell among us, God with us, Emmanuel. But if we don't have a forward perspective, that's to me, that's what Christ in me means. It's his presence, his character in me now, which should affect the way I treat people. It should affect the way I walk through life. But
Mhm.
it's also keeping my focus on him coming again and the hope that I have in that, that this is not all there is, and that this cannot be the sole focus of my expectation in life. It's got to be greater than this. And
Yeah.
this should just point us to the bigger reality of the hope that we have in heaven.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I love how you pointed out it goes from an external focus of how do I have Christmas in the decorations and the shopping and the cooking and all of that and the decorating, all of the trappings of Christmas that make the world and my house look different at Christmas, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's kind of nice that, oh, everything looks different at Christmas because
Oh,
it's
that's good.
decorated
Mhm.
and so it's obviously a different time of year because it looks different with the lights and the decorating. but for going from the external to the internal, because then too, I always found it rather, I don't know, convicting or and humorous at times when I would try to have my quiet time when the kids are little and the kids want to interrupt you and you just want to go, leave me alone. I'm spending time with Jesus. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what kind of
Right.
heart attitude is that? What am I
Yeah.
teaching them? And so, yeah, if we're decorating and we're shopping and we're all stressed out, well, what is that
Mhm.
really showing? We're just kind of just like the world and we've slapped a Christian label on it. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily enticing for people. I think when you talked about the internal, when we have that internal attitude of we're keeping Christ in us and we're being focused on, we're going to celebrate and worship and we're going to decorate, but we're going to decorate with joy and we're going to have a peaceful feel about the house instead of a frazzled, chaotic feel about the
Right.
house. That allows us to use the holidays to draw people in because people are a
Mhm.
lot more open to hearing about Christ at Christmas
Absolutely.
and Easter. But when everything's different and you kind of have this like peace on earth kind of thing going
Mhm.
on. And one of the things that I have liked to ask people is how can we take advantage of that? How can we take advantage of the world looking different, the world feeling different? How do you think we can, with our own attitude, draw people in for the real meaning behind the season?
I love that, Lisa, and I love the way you just framed out the external things still remind us that something is different. I think
Mhm.
that's a beautiful way of kind of putting the right frame around all of the trappings rather than it being commercial and it's a distraction or whatever kind of the negative things that we could think. How can we look at it as no, this is a marking of something is different and I'm celebrating, I'm
Mhm.
worshiping through this. I think that's the biggest thing. Sing it as an invitation. It's invitational. That way, our own attitude and our environment, those two things, our internal attitude and our external environment, are both. I'm not saying they always do. I'm not perfect in this, but what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling as we're talking is those are both invitations.
Yeah.
Internal and external are invitational. And if we approach it that way, it might look the same on the outside, but the motivation behind it is I want this to be invitational of this is a space, whether you light an Advent candle or you put presents under a tree or whatever tradition or way that you celebrate. Something else came to my mind when you were saying that, Lisa. For many years, I mentioned earlier, I was a worship pastor, and that was where I really felt like God was using me. And I'm putting that in air quotes,
Mhm.
listening,
Yeah.
standing behind the keyboard and singing and playing. And I know you like to sing as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but I would feel, for lack of a better word, maybe God's anointing, God's pleasure on my
Yeah.
life. And so when I stopped leading worship, you'll relate to this as an author and a speaker. Lisa, I'd sit in front of the computer and just maybe have nothing flowing and feel blank or feel like it's painstaking to write a paragraph. And I fought so hard in that season to think, well, am I not anointed? Is God not using me? Is I
Mm.
missed kind of some of that. And the way he really walked me through that is look, all of what you do is worship to me. If you're bringing it with that heart, and instead of me just seeing, I can only worship God in this one way.
Yeah.
Now I have on my mirror a little quote that says, how do you want me to worship you today? And so
Mm.
rather than it's this particular act, this particular thing, this particular behavior is worship, it's a lifestyle and that can look different. It might be,
Yeah.
I'm not going to cook anything, but I'm going to focus on my kids and what are they needing? I'm in a what they call the sandwich generation, Lisa, and I have
Yeah.
two young adults and
Mhm.
aging parents.
Yep.
And so in any given day, I'm pulled. And those moments, if they are the priority, and that's the way I'm going to worship today, is to love them well, then that's the heart I'm bringing into the holidays, even if something else has to go.
Yeah.
Maybe that recipe doesn't get made, but I'm present for something that they needed me for. I think the way we bring an internal posture as invitational, it changes our priorities.
Yeah.
Priorities don't necessarily become, I've got to make sure all these 18 things get cooked, but are the people around me feeling loved well? Lisa, I would love to say I've done that well my whole life, but I don't know that I always have. I
Hmm.
think I was too focused on some tasks and
Yeah.
all that had to be done well. Sometimes people didn't feel loved well, and that's an intentional shift on my part. So I think it's seeing these things as invitations, whether it's our internal posture or it's an external environment. Am I inviting others to experience the presence of God in a deeper way, to worship God through this decision, whatever it might be? So it's a kind of a roundabout answer to your question, but I think worship is at the heart, and worship is at the heart of Christmas. To be honest, it's about
Yeah.
worshiping who He is.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I love that, and the whole idea of whatever it is that we're doing, if we do it with that heart of worshiping God, and whether it's changing a diaper or whether it's cooking a meal, whether it's visiting an aging parent or driving them to a doctor's appointment, that if we have that heart of worship, then it is worshiping God, even if it isn't on a stage. And I agree with you. There's something special about music, and I love Christmas music. The passion that I think we both share for music and a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And you are doing other things that you are passionate about. I always like to ask people, what would you say to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart? Because we've mentioned there's so many ways that He can do that. I think God does place a special purpose and a passion in everyone's heart, and sometimes it needs to be encouraged. So, what would you say?
I love that, Lisa. I would just encourage people, anyone who's listening, what I have learned in my life is you'll never go wrong with obedience. It may not make sense at first. You may have an idea of what the Lord might be calling you to or asking of you or walking in his will, but if you'll surrender that and say, God, what do you have for me? It makes me think of Mary, Lisa. And here we are at Christmas, and just in
Hmm.
a day or
Yeah.
so, we're celebrating. The angel visits her. She hears this astounding news that's
Yeah. That
would
could be
really
life threatening.
exactly terrify anybody. And her response is, let it be unto me as you have said.
Yeah.
That is a very mature posture of faith to say, this might not be what I would have asked for, but God, I'm going to choose to respond in obedience and trust you. You will never go wrong with obedience. And obedience is that it's the currency of the kingdom. It's just the way God operates. He blesses it, He
Hmm.
breathes on it. And if we want to experience His presence in this Christmas holiday season, can we have that attitude of Mary? All right, God, maybe this wasn't what I asked for this Christmas, but let it be unto me as you have said. Let me receive your word and your will, and let me respond in obedience. I promise you that's the sweet spot of living for the Lord. And it's a wild adventure. It's a grand adventure when
Yes,
you
it
serve
is.
God. It's never a boring moment when you serve God with an open heart and open posture. And so I'll be praying for all of our listeners as you walk through these next few days, that you would sense God's presence and that we
Yeah.
would really embrace that posture of Mary, to let God be God in our
Okay.
circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, amen. I second that. Now, if somebody is looking to connect with you and gather more of your wisdom and encouragement, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. My website is the one stop shop. So it's angeladonadio.com, Donadio. I have some resources there. A couple of my books are on sale. You can go back and listen to the podcast episodes, anything you would need, my music. Love to connect with you there. Love to send you some free things. So yeah, check out angeladonadio.com, and that's where everything is you need.
Very good. And we will have that in the show notes. Well, Angela, as I knew it would be, it has been a delight and a pleasure to speak with you today. And I truly appreciate your spending time with us today and sharing.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a joy to be here. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas,
And
everybody.
Merry Christmas. Thanks so much for joining me today on A Woman's Heart. I'm Lisa Granger. I hope you enjoyed Angela Donadio and connect with her. You can find all the Christmas episodes this year and last year on my website, lisagranger.com. Merry Christmas.